Do you want to come out and play? Well, we don't exist. You may think, what the hell is she going on about? Well, at first I thought there's no reason for me to come here and to say anything at all. But then I watched television a couple of weeks ago, a very popular German crime series called Tatort. And the content was a woman, let's call her Nina, part of a crime gang that went door to door collecting donations for endangered seals. And all they were doing was, plundering bank accounts with the PIN number that they managed to get that way. Now, the leader of the crime gang was a lesbian with a reputation for violence. So Nina, who really was in love with a man in the same crime gang, pretended to love this evil lesbian, right? And this evil lesbian, leader of the crime gang, in the story, then shot the boyfriend after she found out who it was, and shot the boyfriend in front of Nina. And then there was a chase, and the police had Nina and the evil lesbian. And instead of shooting the policeman, Nina shot the evil lesbian. And I thought those stereotypes were dead a long time ago, that were evil and reduced to this kind of deviant sexuality. But I was wrong. So I zapped channels, and there was a guy interviewing a man who was one of the first gay activists in Germany, who'd been a gay activist for 60 years. And the interviewer had nothing better to ask him than to say, well, is it really necessary for you to tell everybody that you're a homosexual? I don't go around telling everybody that I'm a heterosexual. He meant it as a joke. He hadn't really understood a thing. So that's why I say, we, like we are here today, we don't exist. To most people, we don't exist. I read a couple of studies. I'm going to show some results, talk about some results of a couple of studies I read. One was a study done by Vienna University of Economics and Business. And it was a study where they had surveyed 636 diverse lesbians, diverse in level of education, in employment, all kinds of age groups and ethnic groups. And what came out was that sexual orientation is still a taboo topic. And when they're speaking of sexual orientation, most people associate that you're non-heterosexual. Why otherwise would you have to speak of your sexual orientation at all? And it's usually associated with something negative, because then you talk about discrimination, you talk about violence. So it's not exactly a positive association. And the interesting thing to me was that heterosexuality is not named as the social norm. Now, why is it important? It's important because the one that dared not to be named, right? If it's not put out there, you can't really talk about changing it, right? So what we're looking at is really a subtle form of social exclusion. The survey results show that allusions to lesbian or gay lifestyle are perceived by many as something sexual, and as we've heard repeatedly today, as a private matter. So the social relationships that all of us have are not connected with that. Elizabeth earlier said it's about what we are, who we associate with, who we go home to at night. That's not something that they want to hear about. And the survey also said that when we do talk about our same-sex partners, most of our colleagues are sort of uncomfortable. Why is that? Because of the social norm, because being a lesbian, a gay, a bisexual woman, a transgendered person is usually a non-visible dimension of our identity. And for some reason, some of us, and some of the women in Austria, believe in this fiction of asexuality in the workplace. And we accept that when our heterosexual colleagues talk about their family, what they did on the weekend with the kids, have a photo on their desk of their wife, their husband, whatever, it's normal, right? And the survey also says heterosexual men talk about sex to establish their masculinity and a common ground with the other men usually around them, even with some of the women. So it's sort of like an invisible network. The fiction of asexuality. The survey shows that in total, if you read the comments on the side there, 28% of the participants say it's not relevant or that they wouldn't even talk about it. So they think, or maybe some of us think, that we can separate that part of our personality, separate the social relationships that we have in the workplace. However, most of them say, like 57% of the people surveyed say, hey, yes, it's important for me to have a role model, a lesbian I can identify with. It's a bit of a paradox. Yeah, and as Ulla said earlier, she was happy that there was an Eagle network. So what are we afraid of? Or what are some lesbian women afraid of? And bisexual, transgendered persons. The results of the survey showed, for lesbians, most of us in total are afraid of being valued less as a person. We know about the business case. We can be more productive when we feel good about ourselves. But still, we're afraid of the jokes. We're afraid of losing opportunities in our career. Some are afraid of losing their job and even of violence. So what's the consequence by not coming out, by not overcoming our fear? The consequence is that we leave the playing field of creating social identity, and that which is perceived as social identity, to, in the majority, heterosexual men, because we're not visible. So visibility is what it's all about. So I thought, make the invisible visible. Get out the old symbols. Get out the old symbols. If you're lucky to be in a company where you can have like an email thingy underneath, as we saw today, that's a great idea. Get out there and have a look at your company guidelines about, you know, how you're supposed to work with each other. Maybe you can get a line added to sexual orientation. And maybe recruit other lesbians or bisexuals. And yes, there is a short-term risk when you do come out. I've experienced it myself, right? And recently when asked, what's that on your finger? Yeah? I said, oh, it's a multicolored ring. It's probably made of acrylic, right? So I don't come out to everyone, but you know, you take small steps and you decide who you want to come out to, right? And we heard a bit about straight allies, and Gilly and Veronica said that most of them say it's not so bad to be a straight ally, so maybe we can do something with that as well. And Caroline said, engage men and sow the seeds of change. So it's something that we certainly want to do. And last but not least, I'm thinking that if we do all of this, if we go out and play a part in creating social identity, if we become the visible living assets that Dorothy was speaking of, if we become a group of people, a recognizable group of people, then all these people around us will start to value us. And if they value us, they might put some more effort into those diversity measures that the company has or hasn't got yet. So I'm fairly optimistic. And don't forget to give straight people a chance to be accepting and open-minded, and show them we do exist. Yeah? Show them we do exist. And before I leave you to do whatever you please to do now, I brought along a song. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing. That's one of my favorite songs. So thank you very much for your attention this late in the day.
Is she Lebanese? Well, she's gifted. She's Lebesian, lesbonic, and I happen to know she's a vegetarian.